This video is sponsored by Pablo, more on that later. This is how to draw a manga in 5 minutes or less. When you're drawing a manga, you want to start off by doing a script. It can be super rough too because you can correct things in the storyboarding phase. But here you do at least want to flesh out your characters and what's going to happen in your story. A good rule to follow when it comes to drawing manga is Kisho Tenketsu, and that's a really basic writing structure technique. If you're drawing a one-shot specifically, the twist factor is going to be super important. But besides this, you also want to focus on creating super interesting characters and super interesting stories too. Make sure every character is unique and different. The number one critique I got from my editor is that my characters aren't interesting enough. And I've heard other people get this advice too. So it's important that you settle down and really make a good, solid character. Make all your characters super unique and different in their own ways. You also want to make your stories super interesting too. Interesting doesn't necessarily mean unique or new, but it does mean that it catches your reader's attention and it keeps them reading. A lot of writers will fall into the trap of doing too much world building from the start. In reality, not that many people care about your world building up front. I'm not a writer, so I can't tell you how to write a story specifically. Moving on to the storyboarding phase, storyboarding will be one of the most important and most difficult parts to create a manga. You want to make sure everything's paced properly with the paneling, and you also want to create interesting compositions. When you're storyboarding, it's good to keep in mind not to use more than 6 or 7 panels per page because it can become very cluttered. What you want to do is vary your panels enough on each page that some pages have 2 panels and some has 6 or 5 or something like that. You don't want every page to have 6 panels. Smaller panels equals less important stuff, bigger panels equal more important stuff. You also want to vary your shots and not use too many headshots or feet shots as most beginners do. Keeping in mind varying your shots will make it a lot more interesting for a reader who wants to get into your manga. You also want to use different paneling types. I would suggest looking at a lot of reference on how other manga could do it. One of the reasons this is the hardest stage is because you have to figure out the pacing, and also a lot of things can change from writing to storyboarding phase. Some things that work perfectly in writing may not translate to storyboards. You can go as detailed or simplified with your storyboards as you want, but you want to make sure you get the general story across, and it will be a lot easier for you to go into the sketching phase, which is the next phase.
We interrupt this program for an important news announcement.
This video is sponsored by Pablo, who was kind enough to give me a drawing pen tablet to try. The Intangbo X7 has a battery-free pen that has 8,192 levels of pressure sensitivity, which makes it super easy to create interesting lines. The Intangbo X7 is compatible on Windows devices 7, 8, 10, and 11. It's also compatible on Mac OS 10, 12, and above. Works very well on Android devices too, Android 6.0 and above. You get spare nibs and even a glove in the box. It is a wired tablet, so you will have to use it to connect to your device that way. I actually drew the thumbnail of this video using the Intangbo. I had a really good experience drawing with it too. At first I did have a little trouble setting it up, but you can get the Pablo app and it will make things 10 times easier. It makes it a lot easier to choose your aspect ratio on devices that otherwise you wouldn't be able to. For example, on my Samsung tablet I had to go into the app manually and choose a specific aspect ratio. But this way you can also use the device portrait or landscape, which is something I struggled to do on other tablets. The pressure sensitivity on this tablet is really good and it really stood out to me. This tablet will definitely be one of my go-tos when it comes to inking now. Check the description to get the Intangbo X7 today. There's also a 20% off discount code in the description. Thanks Pablo for sponsoring this video. The sketching phase will play a huge role in how the ending of the manga looks. Here you can also change shots that you did during your storyboards depending on how detailed your storyboards are. Essentially here we're just trying to create the most visually appealing thing we can. All the thinking has been done since the storyboarding phase is over, so this is just to hone down on how every panel actually looks. Depending on your world, you're going to want to draw a lot of different backgrounds for, each scene. This may not be something you did during the storyboarding phase because you want to keep the storyboard super simple. But here in the sketching phase, it can really make your story stand out if you put in interesting backgrounds instead of having it white all the time. But this is also a stylistic thing, so it does depend on what you want to go for. I would get as much detail as you can into the sketching phase because it's going to make it 10 times easier in the inking phase. The sketching phase is also where art skill will come into play a lot more than other technical things. But moving on to the inks. When it comes to inking, you want to keep in mind varying your line variation. This means going from thick to thin lines. You'll notice in a lot of mangas they use this technique a lot. There are so many different ways of approaching it. I have a video on the topic. Some manga could do thick outlines and thinner insides. Other artists will vary the lines more artistically, and some don't vary lines at all. Something else you want to keep in mind is contrast. What you'll notice in a lot of mangas is that there's a good contrast between black and white. Take a look at some of your favorite mangas and I'm sure you'll find a lot of black on each page. Naturally for more manga like shoujos, you'll notice that it's screen toned a lot more. But generally for shonen manga, you'll notice a lot of contrast when it comes to characters. If you look at Dragonball, Naruto, or something like Jeyodin, you'll notice a lot of blacks in the pages. It's something really cool to keep in mind, and if you're thinking, oh, my pages are flat, this could be a huge reason why. Once you get the basics of inks down when you're doing your studies, this should be one of the easier phases to get over with. It can be very time consuming though. And this is probably the stage that you do want to put the most time into because this will be the last thing that people see. After this phase, this is optional, you can go into screen toning. When it comes to screen toning, one mistake I see people do a lot is that they think of screen tones as just color. You shouldn't be thinking of screen tones as color because it tends to make the pages look very grayscale and flat. Instead, you want to look at your favorite mangas and see what tones they're using and apply that to your own work while balancing the blacks. Unless you're doing a shoujo manga or a manga that has more grays in it in general, it could be an artistic thing. But a lot of people will use grays like they're using colors, and that is typically something you don't want to do. Toning is probably the easiest stage depending on how you're doing it. But yeah, that was how to make a manga in 5 minutes or less. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like and drop a comment too. Peace out.